All right, it's 3 minutes past the hour, so I propose that we progressively get started. A number of your colleagues are still in the process of joining the webinar. So on behalf of the International Road Federation, I want to welcome everyone to this fourth installment in our series of webinars on safe and efficient urban mobility for Africa, which we are organizing in partnership with the African Development Bank. We are together for the next hour or so to discuss municipal road safety strategies. Un mot de bienvenue pour nos collègues francophones qui sont de plus en plus nombreux à nous rejoindre pour chacun de nos webinaires. Je vous rappelle qu'un service d'interprétation, et j'en profite pour remercier notre équipe d'interprètes, est à votre service. Vous avez la possibilité de choisir votre langue au moment où vous rejoignez le webinaire, mais également vous pouvez donc changer de langue pendant le webinaire, donc en utilisant les fonctionnalités, les réglages de votre version de MS Teams. Je vous rappelle également que nous acceptons les questions indifféremment en anglais et en français, et qu'enfin, une courte note de synthèse vous sera communiquée en français à l'issue du webinaire. Vous pourrez poser, switching back to English now, you will be able to ask questions and share comments throughout the presentation, and of course we will have a dedicated Q&A question time at the end. After the webinar has concluded, you will receive a recording, a copy of the presentation, and we will also be providing you a link to request your IRF certificates. More on that in just a moment. As you may have seen in the chat box, we're inviting you to let us know which country, and in particular, which city you are joining us from. So please take a moment to let us know who is joining us today. A reminder that... I'll remind everyone to please mute the microphones, again, to ensure that the audio quality is respected for everyone. Thank you very much. So, as I mentioned earlier on, this webinar is being organized in partnership with the African Development Bank. One of the main instruments through which AFDB assists cities throughout the African continent is through the Urban and Municipal Development Fund, UMDF. The UMDF provides expertise, provides capacity building, and other forms of support to your sustainable urban projects. If you haven't had a chance to, I encourage you to visit the website of the UMDF, and you will see there are a number of resources and opportunities for African cities, which you can take advantage of. Just a note on where we now stand in our program of webinars. Many of you joined us for our initial orientation webinar in January, and since then we have been progressing along these two tracks. One track focused on traffic impact assessments with the two webinars which were held on February 2nd and March 2nd, so just last week, and the other track focusing on strategies and engineering solutions for African cities, with a particular focus on non-motorized transport and vulnerable road users. This webinar will, in fact, conclude this cycle of online education tools, which form part of the program, and which will conclude with our workshops in Accra on the 25th of April. So I'll be saying a few more words about that and what's coming up next after the webinars. First of all, we will be providing you a link to give us your details so that we may generate a participation certificate for those of you who have participated in the webinars in question. You will receive that with the copy of the proceedings. We will also be taking this opportunity to share a template for a city diagnosis and action plan that we have been developing over the last couple of weeks. Now, the goal of this template is to provide you with a structured process through which to analyze your urban mobility challenges with a particular focus on congestion and road safety. So we will be taking you through a number of questions, and we encourage, in particular, the African municipalities participating in this program to take a moment to work on this action plan and complete the different parts. Those of you who will be joining us in Accra as part of the final workshops, we'll have an opportunity to review these and perhaps improve these action plans together. So why Accra? Because Accra will be hosting IREF's next regional congress, which will take place on the 25th to the 28th at the Accra International Conference Centre. So we'll be holding these two workshops on the 25th of April, again, structured alongside those tracks I mentioned earlier on, traffic impact assessments and road safety strategies for African cities. Just as a reminder, the cities participating in the program, there is a complimentary access to the entire Congress. So you'll be able to benefit in full from the learning opportunities, the networking opportunities, and to see the sights and achievements of Ghana, quite a remarkable country. Take this opportunity to warmly welcome our colleagues joining us from Ghana, and we know that there are a number of them today. My last word before handing over to Dr. Jean-François Giselle, our road safety track champion, is just again to recall the main topic of the webinar. As we think of road safety strategies, we often consider the national level. We consider what national road safety agencies, what ministries can do. But as this webinar shows, there are a number of opportunities for cities as well to act on the topic of road safety. Vision Zero isn't just a prerogative for countries and governments. It's a topic that works, or it's a philosophy, an approach that works at all levels of government. And I just want to take this opportunity to highlight a very inspiring quote from the former Transportation Commissioner of New York City, who actually New York City was one of the first cities that introduced Vision Zero as a municipal level target. Cities routinely face problems that exceed their capacities and powers. Traffic deaths are not one of them. Car crashes are an epidemic we can solve. Powerful words in the mouth of a transportation commissioner, and I hope this is sentiment that all of you on the call can share. So without further ado, let me hand over to Jean-François Giselle, who will take us through some basic principles, but also applied use cases where Vision Zero for cities is concerned. Jean-François, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you very much, Brendan. I'm going to share my screen. So you can see my screen. Perfect. Okay, welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to be back with you again. I suppose that most of you have been participating to the first webinar, or maybe the four of them actually. As you can see, we had the two tracks. Mine is the green one. That's a picture I showed you last time. So we are here on that second webinar, getting ready for the live workshop that will be, as Brendan mentioned, held in Accra on April 25. So the first webinar, we had a discussion about the road safety in Africa, the specificity of African cities, where we have a high number of vulnerable users. A lot of people are walking, pedestrians, cyclists. And so we just try to understand at that time what vulnerable users were and what were the limitation that they had. Obviously, they have no protection, and they can suffer injuries much faster than the motorists. We talked about speed management, speed being at the heart of the safe system concept. If you lower the speed, you lower the kinetic energy, and obviously you minimize the injuries and the possibility of death. And we discussed different options of traffic calming. On that webinar, I did end up with a couple of elements to remember, and I'm going to tell you again. The first one is that it's an opportunity, I think, that we have to alter the status quo and to improve safety. There is a world trend towards Vision Zero, safe systems. A lot of PE are getting into it, and I do see that as an opportunity much more than a challenge. It's not going to be easy, but it's something we should try to achieve, because it's really worth it. The other point that I mentioned during the first webinar was that all we do, be it decisions, actions, design, must be human focused. We should put the human back in the center of what we do instead of the private car. For many years, car was the king or the queen. I think we should be back to human-focused strategies. Out of all the experience that we have with Vision Zero and safe systems, it became obvious that vulnerable user protection had to be an absolute priority, and that's even more true for African cities. I think the way the African cities are designed and the mobility in Africa being mostly with pedestrians and transit users, I think it must be certainly an absolute priority. Speed management, as I said, obviously it's a control. It's a key element of our safety approach. And we talked about non-motorized transportation as something that should be promoted and favored. I think many countries where it was automobile driven, I am, as you know, I'm Canadian. In the United States, in Canada, the idea was everybody must have a car, and it's been changing. The ridership of the transit system is increasing because people want to walk, they want to use active transportation. And I think that's something that you are already there in many African cities. So we should give the right place to non-motorized transportation and see it as certainly a good option for better mobility and safer mobility. The other point that I talked about was road hierarchy. We need to make sure that all users understand the functions of the road they are on. And they should understand that when they are in a local street, speed is not an option. When they are on a major road or on a freeway, of course, mobility is the first, and they can speed on those ones. But that must be understood and respected by all road users. And the last point was sharing best practices. And once again, I would like to congratulate IRF for doing so. That's exactly what we are doing today. We share best practices from different countries, and I'm going to show you a couple of slides on what other countries are doing. And I think that's the best way to get the best practices. So we should keep on doing that, and working together in cooperation, in collaboration is certainly the best way to progress together. Today, what we are going to be, that was for the first webinar. Today's webinar, I'm going to talk about the Vision Zero concept in principle and the safe system approach and framework, just to understand, how we work with this idea and how we make it something real. How do we take that idea to make it concrete actions? I'll show you a couple of examples in different countries, how that was implemented. And then we'll talk about political requirements for implementation and how are we going to measure success. And at the end of this presentation, I will let Brandon talk a little more about the homework requirement for the workshop and what we expect from that exercise that you will be doing for your own city and discuss with us in Accra in a little more than a month. So let's start with the Vision Zero and the concepts and principle. So traditionally, what road safety people and road engineers were saying is that traffic deaths were inevitable. The human behavior was correct, and when there was a problem, it was part of the game, and we had to live with it. They wanted to prevent collision, that is crashes, and it was an individual responsibility, and spending more money on trying to save lives was costing too much. Then the idea of Vision Zero came up, and instead of saying that traffic deaths were inevitable, we started saying that traffic deaths were preventable. Instead of saying that human behavior was perfect, we realized that, and we need to integrate and consider that human is failing, human is making mistake, and so we should see what happens when they do make a mistake, and after a mistake, how can we prevent them from being injured? The third point of the traditional approach was the need to prevent collision. What we try to do is not to prevent crash. We try to prevent fatalities and severe injuries. That's which is different in the way we bring in solutions and we handle the problem. Another point which is extremely important, beyond the fact that we try to save life and minimize traumas, is that when we thought it was an individual responsibility, now we believe it's a collective system approach that we must implement. And I certainly fully agree with that. We won't be able to reach success, and you won't be able to do it in your own city if you don't work together. Different interagencies, different group. We must involve users. We must involve governments. All the stakeholders of the transportation system must be part of it, both in the approach of trying to make the system better, but in sharing responsibility, which is something, it's a next level. And the last point was when we thought that saving life was expensive, we certainly have proven that fatalities and injuries are much more expensive. Actually, for each dollar that you spend on road safety, you are going to save $4. You're going to get $4 as a return on an investment. So it's certainly an investment that's worth it, and we should not see it as something expensive or an expense, but we should certainly see it as an investment. So this is the concept of Vision Zero. So it's a strategy which is supported by policies to eliminate all traffic fatalities and serious injuries, while we try to increase safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all users. And equity here is one of the key words. I think we certainly want to promote safe transportation for everybody, for all kind of people, and they should not be at risk because they have lower income. That's not acceptable. So out of this concept came a couple of points. The first one is that death, fatalities, and serious injuries was absolutely unacceptable. The other one was that it was preventable. We could prevent accident, and we, through specific actions, lowering speed, better design, better road user protection, we certainly could prevent injuries and death. And the last point was that human life and health had to be prioritized within all aspects of the transportation systems. So not only motorists or not only pedestrians, but everybody, all road users should be respected and protected in the process. So there are a couple of guiding principles. The first one, as I said, death and injuries are unacceptable. It means that we must put life and human health on top of everything else. That should be one of our top priorities. Even when we do a road design, when we build a bridge, when we redesign an interchange or a crosswalk, we should think more in terms of life and human health than mere engineering. The second point is that humans are fallible. They make mistakes. So the fact that humans make mistakes does not mean that they have to die or become severely injured. We could, because they are going to make mistakes, we cannot prevent, we cannot have a system which is 100% foolproof. And in the event that they make a mistake, how are we going to protect them? And how are we going to make that this mistake that they have been making is going to be forgiven one way or another? The third point is that humans are vulnerable. So all groups need and deserve to be safely accommodated. And there is a limit, especially for vulnerable users, and that's why we call them vulnerable. Their capacity to sustain impact is very low. So we have to be extremely careful about that. And since we cannot change the mass of the vehicles, we can certainly play on the speed. So we can reduce speed, and we are going to lower kinetic energy, and we are going to lower the consequences of the impact if there is an impact. As I said, my point number 4 is that responsibility is shared. The system designer have much of the responsibility. We understand that. Road designers certainly have a big part of the responsibility. But all the stakeholders and all the users can play a role. That's why we talk about education. That's why we talk about enforcement. I mean, everybody has to play a role to make the system safe the way we want. Safety should be more proactive. There are a quantity of proactive tools that we can use to identify and mitigate risk. You certainly heard about the IRAP system. We can prevent, and now technology helps us doing that. There are new applications that use artificial intelligence that help us having a proactive approach to safety. we don't see why it's necessary to wait for crashes and fatalities and injuries to decide on the solution to happen, which is exactly what we use when we do black spot study. Black spot studies are it's relevant to do them, but it's a reactive approach. We wait for people to get hurt to start looking at the root of the problem. Now we should try to be proactive and try to prevent accidents before they happen, and we've got the means to do it. And the last point, which is not the least, is that redundancy is crucial. All part of the system must be strengthened to prevent failure. And when I'll be showing you something on safe system, I'll be talking about safe users, safe vehicles, safe infrastructures, and all those points together will make the system safer. It's not only one item or one element we need to look at. So the Vision Zero recommendation is that we must adopt a quite ambitious vision. That's why we talk about Vision Zero. I don't think we'll ever reach zero. Because you may make mistake, because there is something that happens. But trying to reach for the moon, we certainly get closer to it. That's the way we should do it. So don't hesitate for your own city to put ambitions quite high, and slowly you are going to climb the ladder to reach that vision. To climb the ladder, you need steps. You need certainly you cannot jump there at once. So you need interim targets that you need to develop and quantify. That's going to help you to move systematically towards the vision, one quarter or 1 year or 1 month after the other, and you look at how you progress. And you need to develop a safe system approach. I'll come back to that in a couple of minutes, but the same system approach is certainly at the heart of the Zero Vision, and it's certainly essential to achieving those ambitious goals that you are going to set for your city. As much as you can, try to exploit already proven safety intervention. That's why we share best practices. Look at what other cities are doing within Africa or outside of Africa. You can look at what's happening and certainly get ideas and try to reuse the best ideas. To get a good plan of action, you need data. So one of the steps which is quite important for your foundation for building your Vision Zero is to start to collect relevant data and start to analyze that data to better understand the crash risk, not the crash cause, but the crash risk for all the users, not only the motorists or not only the vulnerable users. The data then can be used as a baseline, so you've got a benchmark and you know where you start from. And I'll come back to this when I'll show you what I suggest the best methodology to go ahead. The whole road safety management system should be strengthened at the ministry level, at the different agencies that are involved in your government, at the city level. There are cities where the mayor itself takes a lead and decide that that's going to be a priority. And that's certainly great, because when leaders show the example, people usually follow them. Accelerate knowledge transfer, invest in road safety. As I said, the return on investment is 4-to-1. So you can invest in any currency you want. You are going to get a return on investment of 4-to-1. And foster commitment at the highest level of government is quite important. So a couple of measures I would like to show you that are, I think, quite applicable to Africa. The first one, and I put it first for that reason, is speed management. We absolutely need to enforce the existing speed limit. We must ensure that there is a coherence between speed and environment. This is particularly true in Africa, when you have those national roads that are crossing villages. We need to have gateways at the entrance of the villages. We need to change the design so that motorists understand that they are in a different environment, that they are going to have vulnerable users. It's the same approach that we must apply for school zones. When you are getting near school, you must absolutely reduce the speed, and you must inform motorists about that. And a small decrement in speed produce substantial reductions of trauma. So once again, I think it's if you decrease by 1% your speed, you are going to reduce injury also by a factor of 4, which is quite interesting. Reduced impaired driving. It's a problem in many countries, and there is enforcement that must be made. I think people cannot take the car if they're impaired under the influence of drug or alcohol or medication, and that's something we should make people aware of. The other one is seatbelt, of course, and helmet use, which is a helmet for motorcycle. It's a major issue in Africa, in other countries too, but some countries are well equipped to that point of view. So I think intensive mass media program and penalties should help towards that. Safer road and safer roadsides. That's certainly a target that we should look for. We should try to look for road improvements, rumble strips. There are many low-cost solutions in engineering and in design that you can use, and that will be extremely effective in reducing crashes. And then there are a lot of guidelines on this that you can find that will tell you which measure is reducing either the number of crashes or the severity of those crashes. And that's something we should look into. Then vehicle safety. Vehicle with passive crash protection, active crash avoidance. I know it's a problem which is particularly true in low-income countries, not only Africa, but in many low-income countries. You've got those vehicles that should not be on the road anymore, not only because they are unsafe, but they also generate a lot of pollutions, and that's something that be taken into account, regulation for the vehicles. And the last point, which is not the least, is young drivers. Okay, you must have a system where you have extended training programs. And some countries, young driver cannot drive by night. There is zero blood alcohol tolerance, and they got a system of points if they make a mistake or if they don't drive properly or have a hazardous driving. They are going to lose their permit. So it's something that we should take into account. So long-term measures, those were short-term measures. Long-term ones, and I said something about it, is try to deploy a data collection and analysis system. You will need data to support your long-term strategies and your long-term targets. So collecting data and analyzing data should be done continuously and in the right manner. As I said, you must have interim targets. If your goal is too far, you won't be able to progress. But if you progress with small interim targets, that would be quite nice. A long-term vision based on an agreed strategy with innovation. So you must get consensus of the different stakeholders to build your strategy, and that long-term strategy must be absolutely ambitious. Sorry, I just took a sip of water. Implement the SAFE system approach in all initiatives, and I will show you what SAFE system is in a couple of seconds. You must improve key institutional management functions because you will need the collaboration of everybody. So all the stakeholders involved must be involved. And to this point of view, the management functions must be certainly strengthened and improved. Research and development should be done. And I talked about knowledge transfer and sharing best practices. Another solution would be to work closer to university and research at the academic level. Many countries develop new options and new ideas through a research program or with engineering students that are working on projects and helpful to that point of view. Funding is certainly an issue, and you need to find adequate funding for your project. And to get funding, you must, before that, get certainly approval and collaboration from all the stakeholders that are going to support your request for funding. And of course, the last point is political support. You absolutely need political support. So as you can see, it's a lot of the area is quite wide. A lot of people are going to be involved, but that's the point. Together we are going to be stronger. That if it's done only by one single agency or one single person, we're not going to go anywhere. SAFE system, I've been talking about this. It's a prerequisite. So the only way to achieve that Vision Zero is to adopt the SAFE system approach, and that has been proven. It's at the heart of it. So that requires that the road system be designed not only to expect, but also to accommodate human error. So we are talking about forgiving roads, where we are expecting people to make a mistake. We are expecting crashes to happen, but we want those crashes to be as unharmful as possible. So on one side, we got Vision Zero. On the other hand, we got Safe System. And the key here is that the what is the Vision Zero, what we try to do. That's our objective. But the how is the Safe System. That's how we are going to reach those goals and those objectives. So Safe System approach and framework. Well, sorry, the Safe System approach is an integrated and comprehensive process to improve safety performance on the transportation system that makes allowance for errors and eliminates predictable and preventable serious injuries and fatalities. So said like this, it looks simple, but it requires quite a bit of work to implement it. So once again, what we try to do is reach Vision Zero or aim at Vision Zero, and how we are going to do it is by implementing a safe system. Safe system, as I said, has different components, and it involves users, safe road users. It involves safe vehicles. It certainly involves safe speeds. We want safe roads. And ideally, we need post-crash care, because we know that human is making errors. We know that crashes are going to happen. And when those crashes happen, we can save lives if we do have a post-crash emergency system that's working well. So those 5 elements are the pillars of the Vision Zero approach. So the safe system assumption and characteristic is that, notwithstanding any prevention effort, the user, will make mistake and crashes will occur. So the stakeholders involved in the design of the road need to accept responsibility for safety, and that was not done before. I've been working in engineering in transportation for the last 35 years, which not makes me a young man. But I remember when I was a young engineer, we used to say it's a driver's problem. I mean, this guy's been driving too fast, or he didn't know the rule of the road, and we don't think this way anymore. We believe it's a responsibility both of the driver, who is not following the rule, but also from the engineering team, who should design a system that take into account possible crashes and actions. Obviously, road user may be part of the game. They must accept the responsibility to comply with the rule, and they must accept the constraint of the system. So when we tell them to reduce speed, they should be able to do it. That's right. We must align safety management decision with the broader transport planning decision that meet economic, human, social, and environmental goals. So as you can see, it's really a broad approach, a broad system that we try to put in place. We need to shape intervention, obviously, that meet the long-term goals. As I said, instead of relying on traditional short-term initiatives, we should have a long-term view and intermediate target that we can apply. So also, another point is obviously ensure that in the event of a crash, the impact energies remain below the fatality and serious injury threshold. And one way of doing this, obviously, is reducing the speed of the vehicles. Another important point is that a safe system approach is appropriate for countries at all levels of road safety performance, no matter where you start from, because you are going to create your own benchmark. You will decide yourself what is your starting point and what is your arrival point, and you need to decide yourself what to do with it. It's going to be different from country to country, different approaches, different targets, different goals, but the theory, the system is the same, and that's what we're trying to propose here. So the elimination of all deaths and serious injuries is certainly a long-term goal, but we need to combine this with traditional intervention that we use in the interim. That this is the way we are going to get the best immediate safety benefits. As we said, redundancy is vital. So the Swiss cheese model, where if you put different slices of cheese one after the other, the problem or the issue might go through a couple of holes and a couple of slices, but not all of them. So if you have all those slices of cheese which are safe road users, safe vehicles, safe speed, safe roads, and a post-collision emergency care system. Eventually, we are going to have a safe system. There is a major paradigm shift, both at the political level and at the engineering level with the Vision Zero. Sorry. And I would like to show you this because it's interesting. At the political level, Vision Zero was established. So we said before, road fatalities were seen as an unfortunate system byproduct. We have to live with it. Today, we say road fatalities are viewed as unacceptable and preventable. And this political shift led or resulted in the proliferation of commitment, resources, teams to reach zero death. We are in the second decade of the safety UN safety initiatives, and many committees have been put in place, many initiatives, a lot of report, a lot of data, commitments from all over. And this is what I'm talking about when I talk about the political paradigm shift. On the other hand, there was an engineering shift as well. And we start talking about sustained safety. So before we said, okay, well, if there is a problem, it's a road user, that's his or her problem. Safety is for car and motorist and driver, and they have to obey the rule. We did not think about pedestrian or anybody else. Today, we think that understanding and accommodating user limitations, managing kinetic energy and kinetic energy transfer, and safety for all modes would certainly encourage modal shift. And that's leading to what we are talking now: human-centric design and policy, self-explaining road, forgiving road, traffic calming initiatives, and our famous 3, 4, 5 E's. I'll come back to it in a couple of minutes. We used to talk about engineering, education, and enforcement, and now we've got 4, 5, 6, 7 E's that are being added to it to make our system more complete. So the element of solution, since we start from Vision Zero and we do recognize that accidents are not accident at all, we want to prevent them. How do we prevent them? What can we do in terms of actions? Well, the first one is implement a strict vehicle regulation and testing. We need to have safe vehicles for this to work. Then we need to enhance as a priority the safety of vulnerable users. We need to protect them one way or another. The other one is to improve our road infrastructure for all users. I mean, motorists and motorcyclists and trucks, it's important. So we need to certainly work on everybody at the same time. Positioning road safety as a top priority in policymaking, it should be one of the top priority of all levels of governments, municipal, regional, national. Positioning road safety as a top priority is certainly the way to get there. Safe speeds. We need to increase the enforcement of laws to manage safe speed, and we need to put physical constraint to impose safe speed, especially in areas where there are vulnerable users. Leadership, collaboration, accountability among all stakeholders. It's not only the responsibility of the design engineers. Everybody should be involved in trying to reach Vision Zero. Laws must be reinforced to reduce impaired and distracted driving, which is becoming distracted driving, which is becoming a major issue, not only for motors. Pedestrians are looking at their cell phone while walking, and very often they don't see the hazards and get hurt. And the last one is leveraging innovative technology to improve safety. It's coming up fast. There are a lot of innovations. Not all of them can be applicable, but certainly it's growing, and we should try to follow that trend. Trying to use the best high-tech that we can, still using low-tech solutions, because very often for resources funding reasons, low-tech is still a very good option, but it does not prohibit us from using high-tech solutions. So when I talk about the 3 E's, that was our name of the game. The rule of the game before was engineering, education, and enforcement. Through Vision Zero, what we try to do is go from engineering, education, and enforcement and add to that evaluation, engagement, equity. I'll show you an example here, which is coming from Prince George County, which is very close to Washington in the United States. And they came up with this drawing there, this is how we are going to achieve Vision Zero. It's going to be through education, emergency response, engineering, enforcement, evaluation, and equity. And equity is important because there are low-income neighborhoods in the United States and Canada, and many richer countries, they do have pockets of lower-income people. And the idea is that transportation system should be equitable for everybody. So we need to look at those people and provide them a safe transportation mode that will allow them perhaps to get better economic resources and increase a little bit their income and try to get out of that poverty circle they are stuck into. So I think it's quite interesting to add that equity part in the system. And evaluation makes that is also important because it obliges us to monitor what we do and review on a regular basis if we are progressing. So critical success factors, once again, you will be building on the Vision Zero principles. And what we need as a critical factors for success is political commitment, multidisciplinary leadership, a well-defined action plan, a system-based approach. We absolutely need data-driven initiatives because we do need data. We need cooperation and collaboration. We want community engagement and community that involves everybody, the community itself, but the road user and the municipality professionals, equity, and certainly transparency in what we do. We should tell people this is what we're trying to do and this is the way we are going to do it. And you'll get more engagement and more collaboration if people understand what you are trying to do. So this is the one that we use in Canada, in Quebec. This is our own rule that we built. So at the center here, you can see we've got one ultimate goal, which is a goal, which is as many countries, many cities. It's 0 deaths and serious injuries. And how we are going to reach this goal is on resting on the 6 safe system interacting pillars, which are safe roads, post-crash care, safe vehicles, safe road users, safe speed, and we did add safe land use and planning. That's a very important part also, to have safe land use and planning. The other thing that we have, which is my external ring, it's a Vision Zero guiding principle. So the principle that is that death and serious injury is unacceptable, safety is proactive, all the stuff that I've been telling you. And at last, the last piece of the wheel that we see here is 10 success factor. How are we going to measure success? Through legislation and policy and financing and capacity building and equity and inclusion and leadership and coordination, cooperation. So this is what you have to develop for your own city. You need to have a goal, a vision, and then you need to look at your pillars of safe speed and safe people and safe vehicles, and define your guideline and see what kind of success factor you are going to be using to reach that ultimate goal. So I'll show you a couple of examples quickly. It all started in Sweden, actually. The Vision Zero concept was implemented in Sweden in the 90s. And when other people saw that, they started copying it. Netherlands, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, USA started copying that. And what they said in Sweden, it was, still what is the core of Vision Zero today. They said, it is not ethically acceptable that anyone get killed or seriously injured while moving with a transportation system. So they said that no loss of life was acceptable, and the human ability to tolerate external force was to govern the planning and design decision. I do remember, I was a young engineer at that time, and I do remember when we saw that the first time, everybody said they are crazy. It doesn't make any sense. Getting no one injured and fatality, no fatalities doesn't make sense. But they have proven us that their approach did work, actually. They are not at zero yet, but they are certainly moving forward in the right direction. So what they did, they've got in the rural area, they developed some system. For example, the 2+1 road, where they had 3 lanes and they put a central barriers with alternative passing lanes. So the fact of having a barrier in the center prohibit
puis il y a une
completely
barrière centrale
head-on
avec
crashes. You cannot have head-on crashes.
des
That's gone because there
voies
is a central
de
barrier.
passage
So
alternés.
there is a price
Et
to
à
pay
cause
because
de cette
sometimes you cannot
barrière
pass. You are
centrale,
stuck in one lane, but every
les,
so often you can cross and you can certainly overtake other people. Speed management is a major tool to improve safety. So they decided that speed enforcement camera and ticket for speed infraction were going to be
bon,
the key to
il y a
drive
un
that.
prix à payer,
In the
parfois on est
cities,
bloqué.
they started to implement speed humps, traffic calming initiatives where there were pedestrians, chicane to calm traffic by forcing travelers to take a winding path. They started implementing separate facility for bicycles and roundabouts to manage and eliminate some type of collisions. As you may know, roundabouts for vehicles is much safer than right angle intersection because at right angle intersection, cross intersection, you
Comme
got
vous le
32
savez,
parking
les
points. With a
ronds-points sont
roundabout, it's
plus
falling to
que
8 points only.
les
So it's not
intersections.
roundabouts are not as safe for vulnerable
Donc,
user or cyclists, but for vehicles,
les
certainly
ronds-points ne sont
very
pas
good approach.
si
Vehicle
bons
technology.
pour les
They
cyclistes et
started
les
with some
vulnérables,
intelligent
les
speed
usagers
adaptation
vulnérables,
system
mais
to regulate vehicle
gros,
speed,
ça, c'est mieux. La
alcohol
technologie des
declogging
véhicules,
system
donc,
requiring a driver
un
to breathe into
système
the device
adapté pour
was implemented
régler la
also, and speed
vitesse,
limit.
le système
They started
relatif à
establishing speed limits
l'alcoolémie,
that were reflecting the
la
vulnerability of the
limitation
human.
de
So
vitesse
every time they
qui
were in
reflète
an
la
environment where there
vulnérabilité
was
humaine.
vulnerable user, the speed limit was down to 30 kilometers an hour.
Donc là
Because at
où
30
il y a
kilometers an hour, if you hit the
des
pedestrian,
usagers
the chance of
vulnérables,
survival of that pedestrian is
la
about
vitesse est limitée
80%.
à 30
If you hit the
km
pedestrian at
heure.
50 kilometers
Parce
an
qu'à
hour,
cette
its
vitesse,
chance of
si
survival
on
falls to
cogne quelqu'un,
20%.
il y a une chance de
So that's why
survie
we want to
de
reduce speed
81%.
to give a
Mais si
chance
on
to
va à
vulnerable
50
users.
km à
And
l'heure,
those are the results. When you look at the results
la
since 1997 to 2020,
chance de
you
survie
look at the
baisse
tendency, and there are
à
different programs all the
50%.
way, but it's certainly
Donc ici, par
proving
rapport à la
that
vision
what they
zéro,
are
il y a
doing
des
and the way they are
programmes à tous
doing
les
it is
niveaux, mais
efficient
cela
and it's
prouve
working. It's plateauing at those points where I think we're closely getting to the limit of what we can do, but we can certainly progress, and depending where you start from, there is certainly a gain to do. In the Netherlands also, they launched the safety program in 1992. They were looking at long-term road safety politics that were adopted in the 10 years before, and finally they were adopted in 1992. And their program was a sustainable safety approach can be achieved by recategorizing the road network and adapting the road infrastructure to accommodate the concept of self-explaining roads, which is a very, very good idea. Roads are functions, and they decided to work by category. So when it was an access local street, the speed was to be low. When it was a freeway dedicated to mobility, they could allow much faster speeds. And that's the way to do it. Now, people must understand that. They must understand that they are on a freeway or they are on a local street. And to do this, you make the road talk by itself. The road send the message to the road user of the function of that
secondaire. La route envoie
not a sign, just the
un
road
message
itself,
à
the way it will,
l'usager
if it has
quant
narrow
à
lanes,
la
if it has
fonction de cette
chicanes or
route.
steep humps, you
Ne
know that
rend-elle
you're
même
in
pas
a
des
very
formes,
local
vous
residential area.
savez,
If
une route
it's not a
étroite,
lane, if it's no
voilà,
access
à
is
une seule
permitted,
voie, où
obviously it's
vous
high speed,
comprenez
it's
que
for
vous êtes
mobility.
dans une zone
So,
peuplée. Et si
functionality of
vous avez
road,
de multiples
homogeneity of
voies,
masses, speed and
etc.,
directions,
vous pouvez
predictability of road course and road user behavior through the self-explaining road, state of awareness of road user, and forgiveness of the environment. So that was their approach. And what they did out of that is that they completely changed their speed system. Now that any road with a possible conflict between car and unprotected road user is 30%. When there are intersection and conflict between vehicle, angle collision, it's 50%, 50 kilometer per hour. Okay, no more than 50 kilometer per hour. I said 30%, but I wanted to say 30 kilometers an hour. I'm sorry. The road with possible frontal conflict, head-on collision, it's 70 kilometers an hour max. And then when it's completely safe, that is no access, and you cannot meet opposite traffic, it's 100 kilometer and over. That's on freeway. Australia, New Zealand, they started the approach in 2003 and 2006. And it's been a significant change on how the road safety was perceived and managed. Everyone now is forced to look at road safety from a public health perspective, which is quite interesting. The responsibility lies in all parties that have a role to play in the transportation system, and it is unacceptable that the victim involved in a traffic collision should be blamed. So that's a complete change of the way we used to do it in the traditional approach. So what they did for that is that, once again, they've got their own diagram of what they do, but at the center, as you can see, with their approach, it's a human tolerance of collision impact, which is the key component in achieving the safe system, which is quite interesting. It's I think that approach should be applied in many African cities because of the share of the vulnerable users that you have in Africa, and the number of people walking. I think putting the human tolerance of crash impact at the center is certainly a good approach that could be certainly well applicable for Africa. USA, many public agencies are involved and did adopt the system, so they are working on it. And once again, they've got two principles: human make mistake, and human body have a limited ability to withstand impact. So that wheel that you've seen before is coming from the States. It's the same road pillar as Austro. That's the Australians, but they added post-crash care to it that the other one do not have. More and more communities adopt the Eurovision in the States. Now they've got 45, and it's increasing every year. In Canada, we have a new road safety strategy that has been implemented, and we said that by 2025, which is 2 years from now, Canada will have the safest road in the world, which is a nice dream. I don't think we are going to get there, but I think it's a nice goal. We are ambitious, and we are certainly moving forward to it. So how do we do it? Well, there is a lot of effort in raising public awareness and commitment. There is a lot of work in the media from the government to make people aware that that's what we're trying to do. So improvement in communication, cooperation, collaboration, enhancing legislation enforcement, improving road safety information. This is what we do. So as you can see, it's a lot of communication more than engineering. We got an agency, a national agency, which is a research group, which is called Parachute, like a parachute, which is involved in on injury prevention. And they said, we will create a safer Canada by preventing serious and fatal injuries through evidence-based solutions that advocate and educate. So the idea is certainly make people aware and educate them about that. And now that agency has taken a leadership role in coordinating and sharing the best practices among all the provinces of Canada and all the municipalities. As you know, Canada is a very, very huge country. We've got 12 provinces and 3 territories, and so they are working throughout the country to do that. This is our wheel. Like the Australian, we put the human tolerance to physical force at the center of our wheel, and our success, as you can see here, are all the pieces of the puzzle. So we are talking about multidisciplinary leadership, transparency, equity, political commitment, system-based approach, cooperation, and those are quite important. Parachute develop a map, and I think that's something you could do at your city level. You could develop a map where you can click on the different systems, the different pillars that you have, and show improvement and see how you progress. And hopefully you are going to be progressing nicely and sharing that information with all the stakeholders, and the road user will certainly favor that people will keep on doing it. They will understand that you go in the right direction. I took an example here that I would like to share with you, which is quite recent. It's less than 1 month. That's London. That's coming up from a journal which says that they did implement 20 miles an hour, which is 30 kilometers an hour, zone to reduce collision with pedestrian by 63%. And what that article is saying, and I did copy it here, that's exactly taken from the article because it's interesting. They say that vulnerable users continue to be most at risk in London's road, but since the 20 miles per hour, that is 30 kilometers per hour, speed limit have been introduced, collision involving VRUs have decreased by 36%, and collision involving people walking have decreased by 63%. The number of vehicle collision has reduced by 25%, and the collisions resulting in deaths or serious injuries have reduced by 25%. So as it says here below, it says in March 2020, Transport for London, which is the organization that drives transportation in London, introduced a 20 miles per hour speed limit on all of its roads within the central London congestion charging zone as part of its Vision Zero commitment to eliminate death and serious injuries in the capital's road by 2041. This is really fresh news where you can see the impact of implementing such a strategy. So they said by 2041 we are going to have 0 deaths, and that's the way we are going to be working on this. So share with you a couple of good references. There is a quite interesting book that has been developed by SSAP, which is called Road Safety Strategies for African Cities. And when you open that book, you will quickly fall on an image which is copied here. You can see, which show you the path to follow. It's interesting because it's well done with the road. And it says, well, first you define the problem, then you get started, then you build support. The fourth point is developing a strategy, and then you prepare to implement. And I'll give you a couple of details on this. So I think that's a very good reference that you can easily download from the internet. And when you are going to go through this document, you are going to find this this picture here, which is figure number 5, which shows city responsibility for urban road safety function in Africa. So it's coming from a survey they did, and they got feedback from 29 countries. And when you look at this picture, the level of responsibility is going from top to bottom. So where cities have the most responsibility is for the local road network, and when they seem to have less responsibility at the end here on the bottom, it's vehicle registration or inspection. So the responsibility varies, and the question that I'm asking is who should be responsible for what? And it's quite interesting. So as we go, as I said, from the previous picture, we see that the highest level of responsibility in Africa, which is coming from that survey from 29 countries, shows that it's local roads network, which is quite fine. That's perfect. Then from the same picture, we see that the lowest level of responsibility in African country is on vehicle registration and inspection. And that leads to questions to make a thought about, should the city be responsible for initiatives that are traditionally the responsibilities of other government bodies? For example, knowing that the safe system approach includes safe vehicles, should the city be involved in vehicle restriction that could get rid of the older car and the unsafe cars? So I'm opening the door here for a huge discussion. That would be interesting, and that I won't be able to do within that webinar, but that's certainly something that I wish we could talk more about at the Accra workshop, and perhaps we should have a session on that and discuss how far should the city take the responsibility. But my point of view is that we should go as far as possible on the premises that responsibility will be shared. So taking the fact that it's a shared responsibility, it's not falling on the city. It's just part of their responsibility, as it is part of responsibility of the other government bodies, as it is the responsibility of the road user. So it's a shared responsibility. Another interesting reference is from UN Habitat. You can see here, it's a guide that says streets for walking and cycling, designing safety, accessibility, and comfort in African cities. So I know that there are many engineering documents and references that come from the USA, that come from Europe, the UK, France, and it's fun to see reference documents that are made for African city, for Africa. I think that's quite interesting. A last reference that I'm going to show you is, and we can provide you with the internet link, the UN Habitat partner with the city of Quelimane that's the city in Mozambique. They reclaim street for pedestrian and cyclists. So you see that there is a tendency to reclaim space for vulnerable users, and there are different programs that are being done in Africa about that, and I think it's quite positive. Political requirements. That's important to find out, what's required from the politicians. So Vision Zero communities, all of them demonstrate leadership and commitment. That's the way to go. So if you want to go ahead, you certainly need to demonstrate leadership and commitment. Uh, Politicians, senior management must be involved. Teamwork is important. Accountability among different stakeholders, real public engagement, an efficient action plan, and certainly authority and funding, because obviously we need resources and we need the authority to proceed and the money to do it. The other one is to define appropriate speed for the context. Travel speed set based on the limited physical ability of the human body is extremely important. So speed management and practice to ensure safe speed is certainly one of the key elements. And the other one is use equity focus and proactive analysis. We want analysis and engagement to identify the need of minorities and groups that are at disadvantage, that do not have access to a car. Many groups do not have access to a car, so why should they be penalized by walking or using the transit system or using their bicycle? There are efforts to prioritize treatment for underserved and underfunded neighborhoods. It's part of the global plan, and certainly proactive response to safety issue by implementing systemic process that I'm going to show you what that is. So the traditional approach, it's as we can see here in this graph, the traditional approach for road safety management is certainly network screening and diagnosis and some economic appraisal, project prioritization and evaluation. The systemic approach is a bit wider. It starts with the same thing, but on top of that, there is element number 2, which is identify funding for specific program and implementation and perform systemic program evaluation. That must be part of the game, not on a regular basis. How do we implement the strategy? Well, we've got top-down principle and bottom-up approach. That's the best way to do it. So top-down principle, we enable stronger institutional foundations. We establish a functional road hierarchy, which is quite important. We try to avoid inappropriate land use. We favor multimodal transport, and we certainly improve space use. And that can be done from top to bottom, from political decisions and policies going all the way down. On the other hand, the bottom-up approach is starting from a human-centric approach to road safety, and then we try to shift the focus away from motor. We try to think for all users in a more global approach. Then we try to improve safety through all kinds of technologies if we can, leverage as much as we can high tech, and deploy the 6 E's that we talked about, the 6 E's measure. Do not stay stuck with engineering, education, and enforcement, but add to that the following E's with engagement. So how do we achieve national road safety goals or municipal road safety? I should have said municipal here because it is exactly the same approach. Okay, it's through appropriate management capacity, effective institutional leadership, multi-sectorial coordination, sustainable funding, and data system. You absolutely need data to be able to measure, to target, and to monitor. Without data, you won't be able to see where you are. How do we measure success? A few tricks about this. So measuring success, it's certainly by engaging constituent and key stakeholders to raise awareness and build public support for your Vision Zero that you are going to build. You will need persistence and patience. Okay, you have to be committed. You have to be vigilant. It's a lot of work. Okay, so don't lose faith, and it's going to take time to reach your goal and the way you want to do it. You have to identify and align Vision Zero to other strategic priorities, be it sustainable transport, climate change, chronic disease preventions. Try to align what you do with other groups and try to get the approval of what you do. So working together, once again, makes us stronger. That's going to make the work better. Create some point of intersection and opportunity to leverage resource of funding or timing with other initiatives. Don't work in silo. Try to work as a group and get everybody involved. And try to find the low-hanging fruits. There are quick wins. There are short-term goals that will help you build momentum if you get success, and that will pave the way to your long-term plan. You also have to think smart. You have to measure success. You need to set goals, but no goals are created equal. So what you need to do is make sure that your goals are smart. And when we say smart, they must be specific, they must be measurable, they must be achievable, relevant, and time bound. So that's quite important. Now, based on that, this will be your foundation, and you'll be able to measure the effectiveness of your efforts. So manage by objective. At the start, you've got a list of KPIs. You need to define you need to define your long-term goal first. Okay, that's going to be your vision. So that's done through extensive stakeholder consultation. That's going to be your first step. Then you define your KPIs. I suggest you get advice from leading expert. You build a strong case to get the right KPIs, and eventually you build interim target. So it's going to be based on your KPI, but it's going to be directly linked to your long-term goals and hopefully supported by the previous KPI data analysis. You can use what was done to define the KPI to build your interim targets. How do you define your KPIs? Well, first, you need to define which theme you want to work on for your context. Do you want to work when we talk about safe road user? What do we want to do? Do we want to work on school zone? Do we want to work on crosswalks? What's the idea when we talk about safe vehicles or safe infrastructure? You need to choose your theme and for your context and for your need. So you've got, as we said, we talk about safe infrastructure, safe speed, safe user, safe vehicles. I certainly recommend that safe speed be part of it. Speed is certainly one of the element with which you'll get most success quickly. So my point of view is that you should start with this and take care of safe user at the beginning. When you've got your critical theme defined, within those teams, you need to define your benchmark. And how do you define your benchmark? Well, you compile data. You get data for each team. So you need to look at the situation, what you have, and this will tell you where you are, where you stand. You need to have a starting point, and that's going to be your starting point. Then once your benchmark is established, you define your long goal term. That's where you want to go. So you know where you are and you know where you want to go. And how to get there is by defining intermediate target. That's slicing up your long-term goals into smaller steps, and that will give you the roadmap with the first series of actions for each theme that you try to do with specific goal and interim targets. So some examples of KPIs. While the safety of vulnerable users or speed management or impaired driving, seat belts, helmets, all those are good. So how do you do it? You put long-term goals. So for example, safety of vulnerable user, you say, okay, our goal is to reduce fatalities and injuries by 50% for those. Impaired driving, for example, which is my third point here, would be, okay, let's reduce impaired driving by 30% for all and more for the young driver. Seat belt, let's aim at 90% compliance. And then you put your KPIs, which is a percentage of success that you get on those. So you look at the percentage of reduction in fatalities and severely injured over a defined period of time, and that could be for number of vehicles that you catch driving within the speed limit that are imposed, or driver within the legal limit, or whatever you want. So you've got your area of intervention, you got your long-term goals, and your KPI, which see how you can meet those targets. Monitoring and evaluation. So it must be a continuous monitoring program and process, and it's required if you want to support implementation. So the program must include the evaluation of the following three elements. The first one, you must evaluate your strategy implementation. What have you done? What lessons have you learned? Did you develop the adequate interagency collaboration? What improvements are needed to sustain your overall strategy? So this is at the strategic level. You need to review this and make sure you're on the right track. The other one is performance. You need to review your performance. How are you progressing on your interim safety target? Are you moving in the right direction to reach your long-term goal? Do you need to take corrective action? And if so, in which area? What should you be working on? And the last one is delivery. You need to track progress. How do you deliver what you said you were going to do? And the way to do that, you need to report to the stakeholders. So if you can do yearly report, that's fine. Quarterly report, it's even better. If you can share that with your stakeholder, that certainly sustain the support that you need and sustain the support, the funding that you require from the different agencies that are involved. So a couple of example of countermeasures that do work: speed management and around the school zone. So make sure that your school, your kids are protected. The other one is protected and extended pedestrian facility for both pedestrian and bike lanes. That's certainly initiative you can work on. Pedestrian signals that could help pedestrians understand if they have time to cross the road, or give them time to cross safely. Pavement marking that you can use to protect vulnerable users. Driver feedback with dynamic signs. So you put a sign, the speed limit is let's say 80 kilometers an hour, and you put a radar there and you tell the driver you are driving at 120, that's way too fast. Usually drivers slow down when they see that. They react quite positively. Automated photo enforcement, red light cameras, there are all kinds of systems you can apply that will help you enforce what you try to do and measure it. You are going to tell me, what do we do if we don't have the resources? And the answer is not easy. It's to get creative and try to find other ways to find money. But there are ways to do it. Okay, one way is to build relationship with other potential influencer and founding research partner. If you work, for example, with universities and research center, you may be able to find some funding for a specific project that will improve safety. That's certainly something that can be thought of. Try to get volunteers to help you. People that are going to get on board, if they see that it's going to make a difference in their community, you can certainly help get volunteers to give you a hand. Try to maximize road safety improvement opportunity within existing envelopes. There are budgets. Try to see what kind of money you can take from existing envelopes to dedicate them to safety. Explore new revenue source. Perhaps you could get money out of fines on road users that do not behave properly. Perhaps a fuel tax could be used to generate some money. So you need to talk with the political authorities and try to find ideas to pull out money. A lot of rich countries do that. They've got tolls on some roads. They got taxes on fuel. They got all kind of money, and this money is driven back directly to the transit system. That's what we have in Canada. There is a fuel tax, and all this money helps financing the transit system that we have. And the last point is leverage or piggyback on any other initiative to generate Vision Zero and safe system, such as the climate change project, active transportation program. And there are many of those, and that's fine, because in Africa, you've got a lot of people walking. So you could perhaps do something with this. Academic research, education initiative, collaboration with NGOs. You need to be creative, as I said at the beginning, and try to think strategically. And you look for wins and talk about them. Don't be silent when you see that what you are doing is working. Make sure that people talk about it in the radio, on TV, in the newspaper. Make people aware of it. Share recognition. When you get thank you letter from people because you did save life, share it, and so people will get proud and will give you a hand. If specific targets are not supported, the aim for subjectively defined improvement should be proposed. And of course, start moving as early as possible to promote safety. And you can, when we say as early as possible, it's at the planning stage. So land use planning, development project, road rehabilitation, all those projects should implement embedded safety into it. Communicate your initiative as much and as widely as possible to generate some transformational paradigm I showed you, and try to get the road safety culture ingrained into everybody's behavior, all the stakeholders and the road user. Some key questions to ask yourself, and I'm going to conclude with this. So, what is a full listing of road user? Did we take everybody into account in our plan, in our strategy? What are the different safety needs and demands for each of those road user groups? They've got different needs and they've got different limitations. What are the similarities among the different groups? What can we leverage from one to the other? If it's applicable to this one, can we use it for the other one? How can I put myself in the shoes of each road user and fully understand their needs? And you need to do that to better serve them. What is the stakeholder ability to fund and to sustain safe system components and initiatives? Think about it. Try to see if you are going to get some help or not. So last example, the UN development goal, you know that. So it's very specific. They have goals and they say, okay, for example, by 2022, we want to halve the number of global deaths. You can do your own, and you can be certainly wide. This is targets that been implemented, and I don't want to look into the detail because there is too much on this side, but look at what I'm going to show you now. The first one is an action plan. So at that level, you can act. The other one is legal tools. You can work on the legislative part. The third one is engineering. It's standard for new roads. And the fourth one is standard for all the roads. This is pure engineering. You can work on that. Then there are standards for new vehicles or vehicles. There are speed management politics that you can put in place. Motorcycle helmets, seat belts, impaired driving, distracted driving, trucker resting time. It's quite important. And emergency response. So you can see you can have specific target for specific subjects with specific goals and specific interim targets. So that's the way it goes. The next step of our process today, as you saw, that was the second webinar. So we kind of thought of what we do. The next one will be the workshop. That's going to be, I said April 24th, but I think it's April 25th. So my apology, it's on the 25th of April. You've got some homework requirement that was proposed or will be proposed, and I'm going to give the mic back to Brendan. And before I close, I would like to thank the interpreters, because I do realize that I spoke way too fast for you people. So I'm sorry, my apologies for that. I just realized it as I did it. Brendan, that's you. Oui, je m'en vais de là.
Outstanding. Thank you very much. And great insights, a set of recommendations that covered a number of areas. Let me just go ahead and share my screen again so that I don't leave you with an empty screen. Please bear with me again. All right. This is us. I apologize. Okay, we're back online. So we covered a number of topics, and first of all, I want to be sure that we open, for Q&A. We presented a lot of kind of best practices.
Je veux m'assurer que
the
séance
grounding in the international state of the art.
on a partagé pas mal de
Each of you will have kind of
bonnes
different
pratiques.
stories,
Vous savez ce que se
experiences
fait de mieux au niveau
with
international.
respect to some of
Chacun de
the
vous a
areas that were addressed
certainement
today,
son
whether it
parcours,
be
son histoire
the fundamental
personnelle
measures,
sur
whether it
certains des
be
domaines dont nous avons parlé, qu'il
communication
s'agisse de
strategies
financement
around road safety.
de ces
And I want
domaines,
to focus on
qu'il
communication
s'agisse de
strategies for a moment,
stratégies de
because
communication.
the
Égard,
we've
souvenez-vous,
seen, Vision Zero is relatively
la
recent,
vision
but not
zéro.
entirely new phenomenon, particularly in North America. Again, thinking back to Jeanette Sadiq Khan, Vision Zero was, proclaimed as an objective by New York City in 2014, and a number of cities followed suit. And the initiatives were not always successful, as it turns out. It looks like those cities that were perhaps that managed the process best were those that engaged in, I would say, a ambitious, somewhat aggressive, in fact, reallocation of urban space, taking some of that urban space away from motorized traffic, combined with measures to reduce speed, again by lowering speed limits and by aggressively again enforcing those speed limits. One of the common factors between those two measures is that they're not particularly popular. They may result in congestion. They may contribute to slowing down traffic. Let me read from a quote that one of the we moved from New York to LA with Celisa Reynolds, the director of the LA Department of Transportation. So she says, it's hard to be opposed to safety. However, there comes a moment when a person shows up to do the actual infrastructure project and it's down the street from your house. Whether it's a bike lane or a bus lane, the calculus suddenly changes and it feels like a fundamental assault on your way of life. So as we think about, mayors, how far, should we be prepared to change the status quo in order to achieve this vision of safer streets for all?
Brendan, that's a very good question you are raising, and I think it's there is no unique answer to this. I think each of us has have to look at what we want to do, what we want to achieve, and see see what we're going to do to achieve that goal. One of the first things that we need, and I think I said it a couple of times, we need a political leadership. So the first thing that you will have to do is have a group of convinced person that that's a way to go, and that group of person that are going to push Vision Zero and safe system at whichever level it is within your city. It could be at the neighborhood level, it could be at the city itself, it could be at the whole country. Those people will need support from from everybody. So they need to sell their idea and what they want to do, and that's not an easy sell to do. But one way to do it is show what we have, show the statistics, show the cost of fatalities, the cost of injuries, bring your own data and show that, how come your people, your neighborhood must be hurt or die on the road. It's not acceptable. Then you introduce the Vision Zero idea, and out of that you can start building something. But of course, you'll get always people complaining about that. You'll get always people that do not agree. But I think you need to start with good data and try to show the advantage of what you are trying to do, and better, you need to show the impact of not doing it, and perhaps you are going to win some point there.
Thank you very much. In terms of, as you said, winning some points, I think one of the points that you made was, although, it's desirable to have a long-term strategy, sometimes you do need to kind of identify those low-hanging fruit. We've seen and heard about, in fact, during the orientation webinar, the popularity of, for instance, school zone safety programs. And it is difficult to find anyone who would oppose slowing down traffic and introducing other safety measures designed to protect school children. What's your experience with this, and how do you build perhaps on these maybe low-hanging fruit as a way of raising awareness of and building on the establishing the popularity, if you want, or the foundations for maybe more ambitious citywide safety programs afterwards?
That's a very good starting point. I think a school zone is certainly a good start, because everybody wants to save kids, surprisingly. And I don't know why. When people get killed on vehicles and car accidents, we are all saying, well, that's too bad, but as soon as we know that there is a kid involved, everybody freaks out. So it's if like we believe, or people feel, that the lives of children are more important than the life of adults. It's just a normal reaction. Everybody's feels more concerned or sadder than when something happened to children. That's why starting with school zone is certainly a good idea. Then you should see what you can do with your school zone, but you can implement low cost solution, making sure that your student that go to school do have a safe path to work on, and they don't have to walk on the main road. If you just put a speed limit and say reduce speed, nobody will do it. But if along with that speed reduction, you start putting rumble strip, you start changing your design, your engineering, you reduce a lane, and you impose on the motorist a reduction of speed, that's going to work much better. And I think you should get the kids themselves involved. So that should be a school project, saying that we are going to have the safest school around, and we're going to be proud of it. So I come back with my communication idea, but you should diffuse that message. You should have the kids talk, have their picture in the paper and say, I am proud to be part of the safest school of my country. And that's the way to do it. It seems simple, but it's surprisingly efficient as a measure. When people say, I am a kid, in my life, I want to become whatever, an engineer, a professor, an accountant, or a doctor. I need to go to school, and I want to come back home safely. That's the way I would do it.
Right, thank you very much. I'm not seeing additional questions at this point in the chat. Again, please feel free to share your insights. We each have a very kind of a personal relationship to the topic of road safety, and we're keen to hear from experiences in cities. But we will have an opportunity to share those also when we meet face to face in Accra. For those of you who'll be joining us, just would like to take this opportunity. If I know the African Development Bank is also on the line. Perhaps Niji would be willing to unmute himself and share some closing thoughts, as he has very kindly done for the previous webinars. And while Niji is perhaps thinking of some closing thoughts, let me just remind you again, perhaps not all of you were there when we opened the webinar. So we've been receiving questions about what happens next. First of all, you will all be receiving a copy of the recording, which is taking place currently, and the presentation will provide you a link also to request an IRF certificate. As Dr. Jean-Francois indicated, we'll also be providing those of you who wish to go a little bit further an opportunity to download a template for a city diagnosis and action plan. Again, the idea is not to kind of reinvent the wheel. If you have action plans in place, that's great. Then why not take compare them side by side, perhaps with the our template, and see if any aspects perhaps can be enriched in your current action plan. And again, what we're trying to do is we are trying to look at the topics of urban mobility and city street safety side by side. And so we will take you through that process. That will be conducted offline. And again, any participating city can and is encouraged to use that template, exchange with us, and enrich our collective knowledge. I want to highlight and those of you in particular will be joining us in Accra. We'll have an opportunity to further discuss and exchange with our instructors and other participants on this diagnosis and action plan. In particular, I want to highlight that the final components of this diagnosis and action plan, we're asking you to help identify areas where upskilling might be required, or where there might be some knowledge gaps. This is information that will feed into IRF's program of work. It will also feed into the reflections of our colleagues from the African Development Bank. If the African Development Bank is willing to come in, now would be a great point. If not, my last role here would be to let me just check if we have. Okay, I don't think we have them at this point. My last role would therefore be again to remind you that we will welcome as many of you as possible at the 3rd IRF Africa Regional Congress in Ghana, Accra. I've put a link to the event page, but of course we will be providing you all those links, and indeed to all the other resources that were shared during today's webinars, including the best practice guidelines, which Jean-Francois alluded to. Again, a reminder that on the opening day of the Congress, there will in fact be a series of workshops. Again, the idea is to move from the good practice, the theory that we have been discussing, into maybe the more kind of applied practice and get into the difficult questions. The best way to do this is face-to-face, and we think you will gain great value from participating in these programs. So if there are no further comments and questions at this point, and we have all your email addresses, so you will receive, as I said, a copy of the presentation and the recording. So if we have no further contributions at this point, I would like to extend our sincere thanks to Dr. Jean-Francois, who has joined us today again to share these brilliant insights, again, which build on many years of practice and experience in other parts of the world. And we hope you will find them of interest and of application to your context. Again, we hope to see many of you in Accra for the 3rd IRF Africa Regional Congress. We'll provide our contact details. Let's stay in touch in the intervening while. Again, thank you on behalf of the IRF, on behalf of the African Development Bank. We wish you a very pleasant and safe rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.